Hey guys, it's Ellen and welcome to my channel. Today it's all about the bokeh technique. I go over this step by step, of course. This is a fun technique to play around with. A lot of wet on wet and like painting translucent color. I'm using watercolor and gouache with this to get that, you know, kind of atmospheric look that you see with bokeh, which is basically like the foreground or the background can be kind of like muted and, you know, blurred and hard to see. So I'll go over these two cards and how to create this. If you have any questions, please in the comments section. Also, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to know my tutorials up. And also check out my Patreon. I have ad-free videos, traceables, exclusive tutorials on Thursdays, and a live stream once a month on the top tier. You can check it out in a second right up here in the right hand corner. Boop. Yep. So without further ado, let's get painting some bokeh. For supplies, a 5 by 7 inch piece of Arche 100% cotton cold pressed paper. I taped down with Scotch Magic tape just on a thick piece of cardboard, you know, that I use. This is just a fun exercise. You can turn it into a card. You can do whatever you want with it. I want you guys to get used to playing with wet on wet and this kind of technique, the bokeh technique, you know, that takes a little getting used to, and there's different variables to do it. You can do it, just look at the white circles. You could add colors to it. We're going to try a color one after this one. This one will be mostly like the white circles. So I'm going to do more like green kind of colors. You can put like a green, like tree branch in here. We're going to play around with it. So I mixed up some greens already. A deep green, a medium green. I've got my Prussian blue up here, and I've got my white gouache kind of really loosely wet. We're going to play around with using a mop brush. You know, I have this Princeton 12. Just going to put wash the color in. We'll splat some of the color. And then when we put the white circles, we can use a nicer brush or a kind of crappy acrylic brush. Or if you have a stencil round brush, that would work too. Or a round sponge, something like that. So let's just get the paper wet. I'm going to grab my brush. I'm just going to get it all wet. I want you to have fun when you're doing watercolor. You can sing, you can put music on. This is just a fun little way to play around with things. Now, if you had something specific that you wanted to paint that was in front of this, you would mask it off, you know, like an ornament or something, and then just do the background. So I got that all white. I'm losing it, guys. And so I'm going to add some of this darker greens. I'm going to do in the bottom and the top. Get a little bit lighter in here. Get these greens going in here. In the middle, I might add a little yellow, a little brown, that green. Or I'm going to add some blue. Actually, I'm going to add some peacock blue. Play around with this. Some blue. I like the blue. But you could do the yellow too. See? If I don't like it so much, I might remove some of it because I want it to be like a little more golden yellow. So I'm adding some cadmium yellow deep with some burnt umber. Ooh, a little golden. Gonna remove some of that. Playing around. Get some of that yellow green in there. So now I'm going to put some more of this dark green up here. While it's still damp, I'm going to add some of this Prussian blue and some neutral tint. Get it really dark on this side. I want this like a deep dark corner here. Dark green. Getting kind of messy with my watercolors, but just because I'm trying to paint fast. So a little dark in here. Adding in some Prussian blue, like I said, and some neutral tint. I want it almost like a real deep blackish green here, bluish green. And in here, up in here too, see? Over in here. Again, I'm getting that Prussian blue with some neutral tint. Just clean up my brush. I'm just going to go rub that neutral tint right in there. That'll make it nice and dark. And then over in here. And I can kind of play around with putting some green in here. I don't know if I like the yellow so much. I might play around adding more blue. If you didn't like the color too much, you can just remove it a little bit with the paper towel. Don't feel like you have to keep it. and actually just kind of see like this. I didn't mention that I had paper towels in my paints, but you know, I go over my paints as I use them, so it's kind of a given in every single tutorial I have. And they're always in the description box, by the way. See how I just took some of that color away? And go back. I'm flipping the paper around. Gonna have it bleed a little bit. I'm add to this neutral tint color. Just like that. Do the same thing. Go back this way. Gonna add some of this neutral tint color this way. Gonna green some green in here. So just playing around with getting greens in there. At this point, if you wanted to kind of put in, like, I'm grabbing my Princeton 8 long round, like a green branch. So I'm going to make some deep greens. I got my yellow here, cadmium yellow deep. Going to grab my Prussian blue. Clean this off because it's just full of yellow paint. Okay, my swish, 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 swish. Those are my sound effects. Don't you love them? Trying to make that green color. Okay, and I'll add a little neutral tint. Get it darker. It's not coordinating to work today. There we go. And I'll add some of this color. So you could kind of just like, still very damp in here. Just put some like twig branches. And they're going to bleed, which is great because you want this subtle, soft. See that? Again, I'll make it even darker. Dark, dark, dark. See? So you recognize that they're like branches from the tree. You have some hanging down this way. Just like that. I know. Okay, so while this is still very damp, I am gonna wish the color a little bit here. Wish. Add some water and just kind of move this color around a little bit. It's still very damp. Now that we had that wet gouache, right? You can use gouache. Also, I use sometimes the acrylic ink. This is from Liquidtex. This works really well. Gouache is like chalk in it, so it kind of repels the watercolor. Getting this pretty loose. And I've had so many videos where I do this. I just splatter it. So you get some natural kind of elements kind of splattering. That will kind of bleed into the color. They won't stay this like solid white. It's already kind of having that bokeh effect. And then we're going to go back in and we're going to add really big circles. These are just the small ones. And they kind of, they'll do that spider effect. Okay, and we'll go back in later on. You really see it kind of right there. This is like get all your anger out on the brush. I did it really intense right in the center there and up here. So then we're going to wait till this dries on its own. Like you can play around with it just a teeny bit, but I wouldn't really touch it much. Let it do its bleeding thing, you know. Bleeding thing. You want bigger dots, you know, you have to use a bigger brush usually to splat. Now, when I use the acrylic ink, let's shake this up a little bit. Okay, so when I use the acrylic ink, trying to get the cover up, cleaning off my brush, it will repel also. Might repel a little bit different because it's acrylic paint. And it's also ink. It's kind of like an oil. So I might make some bigger splotches. Look at that. It will stay much more white than the gouache will. The gouache is going to bleed a little more. It's going to be more opaque. The acrylic ink should stay pretty much white. So then you have to naturally let this dry. And that's going to take time. Right? This is just the beginning stage of what we're going to do. And then we're going to go back in and add some more fun. By the way, when the paper is still damp but soaking in the paper, it's less wet. I went back in and did another pass, like here, you see, of some more branches, and they'll bleed, so they'll be like kind of really soft and subtle. You can do as many branches as you want, wherever you want. These ones will be a little more intense because it's dried up here. You see that? And these ones will still bleed because they're not. So you can play around with that a little bit. Okay, guys, for the fun part. So now that that's dry, I'm going to take my Princeton 8 long round. You can use whatever brush you feel like you can handle. I'm going to take the gouache. I'm going to water this down. We want it kind of translucent. So I have my paper towel close by. Still have a little blue on my brush. Going to remove that. Fairly wet. We're going to do some circles, right? So it should, if there's water on the gouache, it should dry a little more translucent. We're going to keep building on this. So we're doing a circle here. If you can't barely see it, you might have to add more pigment. See, white circle. Going to let that completely dry before we do more on top of it. See, this one's a little bit more pigment, less wet. Circles right here. See, they're pretty translucent because I added water to it. The less water. And this is one that's splattered. We could make this like a real serious one. See? And we'll put some other ones over in here. Really, like I said, the less water. Make some nice big ones back here. Now I wouldn't do them everywhere. You want to concentrate them kind of in this section here because that's where the light's kind of flickering. And see, I had some medium ones, some big ones, small ones. This is the first pass. Then we're going to do another pass. See, the less water, it's going to be really white circle. And you can do some actual circles here. And we can do a pass of ones that are translucent. It's always a combination. And then we're going to do some little sparkle, like almost like snowflakes. So I'm going to go back on this one, make this one really intense. See that? Another one both here. You see how you can't barely even see that circle? It dried so light. Like I said, you might have to go back another pass if you want a little bit darker, or you want to keep it that light. Can't see the ones back here. And you put some up front here, like the little ones. I'm going to kind of cluster it. So now I have those little branches. You can kind of put snow on the branches too. You see all those little branches I did? They're kind of like faded. You can kind of put some snow on them, like I'm doing here. And then have some little teeny dots clustering. And we'll do some faded ones too. Putting the snow on the branch. Have to water this down, like up here. Snow on the branch. And like I said, you can add some circles. It's going to be like a constant. When this dries, you have to see if it's dried too translucent. No, this is dry. So you can put another translucent one on top. Now, you're going to do all those, but when you get back to the end, we're going to take out like a number 4 brush. I'm going to just show you one of them. And we can put like a sparkle in the center. So say we have this one that should be a little bit whiter. Try to make this one perfectly circle. And then up here we could do like a little sparkle. See? Crisscross applesauce. Just like that. And you can make a few of those little dots here. Right by the ones that faded, the ones we splattered. Just put a little white dot in the center of those that's splattered that you barely see. Just taking the tip of this one, crisscross, and then put the white dot right in the middle. So just 2 lines, crisscross, crisscross, and put the deep line in the middle. If you find a nice faded one, put down here, crisscross, you see? It just looks like a little sparkle. Kind of fun, right? Like I said, you can add a little snow. I'm going to add some more dots, kind of like over here. So if you make a really translucent snowflake, just put the little dot in the center. It just changes it. Now, don't be afraid to add some glisten. I might add some gold. And you can put some of that in too. Water it down. I was trying to do a gold effect in the middle. The gold bokeh is a little trickier than just doing the white. But I kind of like it. Just adds a little something different. Same premise, I'm doing the circles. You can water it down. And you get the sparkle. I love it. We could play around adding snow on the branch up here. Go right over that bokeh circle you made. And then snow on this one here. You can also splatter some more paint too when it's dry. Give it that more sparkle look. Don't be afraid to play. I love it. It's pretty, right? So we're gonna move on to a simple. Okay guys, so now we're gonna do a fun tree. On this one, I'm doing it this way, vertical. Actually, I have this kind of tilted weird. I don't know why. And just think of a tree, just triangle kind of shape. And we're going to work on, so this is something you can do differently. Like you have a tree in the center if you want to, a tree off to the side, like I had in that very popular video. I'm going to kind of have off to the side, kind of like right here. So I don't have to necessarily get the whole thing wet like I did the first one. This one we're going to do wet and wet, but we're going to just play a little bit differently here. We're going to mix a nice blue background. I've got my ultramarine here. La la la. I'm going to make some neutral tint with it. I want like a blue gray color. Add some more blue. And I always like to test it on a piece of scrap. So I've got one over here. And now obviously that's too dark. I'm going to water it down. I'll keep playing how I water it down, how it looks. I water it down. Look at nice pretty blue. And that will work nicely. Let me just move some of my brushes out of the way. I might actually add some peacock blue to that too. Let's see how this blue looks now. You want to play around with that. You want to play around with the color. You're going to water it down. It will be even lighter when it's really wet. So that's kind of pretty. Okay, so if you want to draw, I would draw with this, actually with your brush in a way, where you want the tree. Kind of like maybe here, right? That's where the tree's going to go. And the rest of it is going to be painted with this blue color. We're going to go fast. So mix up a good amount of this blue. I'm adding more water. As you see, I put the paint down. I'm grabbing water from my jar. And I'm just whooshing that around because I wanted it fairly light anyway. Now, wherever we put the paint down, we can add more paint to it, and that's where the paint will go. It won't go in the dry area unless we make it go there. So at this point, I'm going to add, I'm just going to keep that color, I think. Okay, so now we got this dark green still from our old, the last one we just did. I'm going to mix this green up. And I'm going to put this in here. in the triangle shape. Now I know they're going to be touching each other in a second, but don't worry. So we're just starting off in a triangle, and then we're going to try and make it look a little more realistic. The triangle is just going to help you with placement. So I'm just grabbing some more water. I'm going to mix up some more green. So I've got my Prussian blue and my cadmium yellow deep. And I'll add more Prussian blue, and I'll add some burnt umber. I've got the green. And I think I'll add some more blue again. I'm going to water this down. See, I'm doing the triangle shape. Now I'm going to get a little bit darker on this side. As you see, I'm getting a little bit darker. Now we're going to play around with just kind of pushing the paint out like this. See? To make it a little more realistic looking, but it's going to bleed into that blue color. Just a little push, a little push, a little push. Not everywhere. And the less water you have, the less it's going to bleed. Now I might be doing a spider thing, so you might have to kind of play around with waiting a little bit till it's, or adding more pigment, more color, so it doesn't bleed as bad. I'm going to add some thicker paint, so I'm going to add some of that burnt umber, Prussian blue. I'm going to be really bad. I'm going to pick my brush into that yellow. It's going to be dirty, but no, it's still too bright. I need a darker color. Okay. See, just kind of pushing that out. You can leave a little white there. If it's white, it's fine. I'm just doing this like sweeping kind of motion. Now, if it dried over here, I'm going to show you what to do to fix that. We've got the bleeding going on up here like we wanted to. Nicely. Going to fill that in. All down here. Okay. Clean up my brush. You know what I'm going to do. I'm going to get wet right here on the sides. I'm going to grab a piece of my paper towel. Just going to play around with removing it. It's kind of like the premise that we did with the holly leaves, and painting and removing. I'm going to play around with this. Same thing. I'm adding some neutral tint. I want like a darker color. I'm just going to splash this Prussian in different areas. I feel like it got too spidery, if that makes any sense. Like goofy tree. And if you want to remove some of that, like I said, paint, you can kind of remove. Look at that. Just roll it up in a little ball. It's already getting that bokeh kind of look by removing it. You gotta roll it up in a little tiny ball though. See? A little ball. Just a little ball. And just go lift. Lift. That is so satisfying. Lifting the edges in the tree. Lift. You're going to have to do that with several of these paper towels. In a ball, while it's still damp. If it's dry, you just can't lift the paint. And if you have a bigger ball, it's going to make a bigger circle. So it's another little trick to use instead of masking fluid. See? Lift, lift, lift. Lift, right, lift. Now, still damp, we can go in and take our gouache or acrylic, white acrylic ink. I'm going to water down this gouache. And you know what I'm going to do, guys. You know what I'm going to do. You know what I'm going to do. I'm going to splatter. Hopefully if it's still wet and damp. It's going to do all, I'm going to do a little more splattering on the top and maybe a little on the side. Kind of loving the top, and I'll show you in a second up close. You can sit there and do this all day long. Some people think it's horrible to do this, and I just love it. I love my sound effects. And we can go back and strategically stick in some snow, but I'm going to do splatter right now. I'm doing a lot. Getting a lot towards the ends of the tree. Has this really cool look to it. The top of the tree. I'll show you in a second. Can you see that? Oh, that looks so cool. Now, we're going to have to let this baby dry. I know, it's hard to do, but you got to do it. You can start to paint if you're bored and like, oh, I want to dry and I'm bored. You can paint strategic dots, you know, here, and bigger ones while you're waiting for that part to dry. Because we're going to be doing the dots on the tree. Remember, we moved some of the paint, so you can kind of play around with putting those dots in now. Look at that. Oh yeah. Let's see what happens. Big ones out here. That's why I love the gouache. Put some big ones over here. We can come back and fix that. And let this dry, and then we're gonna come back, finish her up. Oh, now for the fun part. I just love how this repelled it and made this really cool look in here. Gonna take some red. I just mixed up some red. You guys know how to mix up red. Gonna water it down a little bit, and we're gonna do some colorful circles. Now it's gonna be a little translucent. Put a few over here. Up in the tree. Do some bigger ones down below. Big red one. Big red. Right? Clean up my brush. We do some yellow. Just take some yellow straight from the tube. And we'll do some yellow ones. We can water some of it down. Some loose yellow ones. Spread them around. You can paint them on top of the white area so they really stand out. See? Boom! You really see that yellow. You don't go too crazy. I'm going a little crazy here. Let's add like a nice pale blue color. So you can take your gouache and you can mix it with the watercolor. I'm taking the gouache and mixing with my ultramarine blue. See, I got a pale blue. And we can put that right over here. Don't be afraid, guys. Can add a little more blue so it's brighter. Went like colorful dots. I got our white gouache, and same thing with the, oops, that's a little too big. Gonna have them like translucent and not so translucent on the outside edges of the tree. A little on the inside, more on the outside, and some on the inside. And then some big ones out here. I love the happy accents of just splattering that paint and seeing what happened to the tree. Get a nice big one here. And a big one down here. Big bokeh. Bokeh. I think maybe like Bokeh Raton. See, this one kind of dried. You really can't even see this white one. So you know the premise. How we do these. And have some out here. Just gonna keep playing around. So you do your first pass. When that dries, we'll go back and we'll do the second one so it kind of overlaps that translucent. Once that's all dry, you can take your brush or pencil or painting, whatever you want to do, and you can write Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays. Mary. Doesn't have to be perfect, by the way. You can add little serifs on the edges. Christmas. Look at that, guys. My desk is such a mess. Bokeh! Not a polka. Did we have fun doing this? Splattering, painting, creating, having fun. You can write happy holidays up here. You can do in gold. Have fun, guys. I want you to have fun. It's all about fun. This was a lot of fun. I love that technique of like the paint just creating that. Look at that weird kind of almost like a marbleization. So I hope you enjoyed this. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Again, if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. So I'll talk to you later, guys. Have a great day.